Let's take a bit of a step back and get really fundamental with what we're trying to do on the offensive side of the ball and what we're trying to stop on the defensive side of the ball. The title of this video, I still haven't come up with. It's going to be something like every play is an RPO. And bear with me for a second as I explain that. And really, this whole video, we're going to be explaining that. But, I hear this a lot. Okay, maybe not nowadays where it's been a little bit established, but, you hear this how RPOs are kind of gimmicky. You're kind of bending the rules of the game so that you can get guys open or you can improve your run game or things like that. But to me, an RPO there's nothing more fundamental than that. And in fact, every play is an RPO. And how I'm going to explain that in this video is I'm going to go over this particular formation, which is trips tight end, which has been really good in this game for many, many years running now and is especially good this year. For whatever reason, I can't really make it work for myself. I just can't get really comfortable in it. But I'm pretty impressed with how people use it online because it really stresses your defense to the point where you have to defend the run game, you have to defend bubble screens, you have to defend quarterback run game, you have to defend all the different route combinations, deep, shallow, crossing, check down. And then the kicker at the very end is scrambling quarterback. And, you have variations of this. You have Trey Y flex, where the tight end is a little bit off the line. You have bunch tight end, which puts the trip side in kind of a compressed look. They all kind of follow these same principles of a really good offense, and that is stressing the defense and making them in conflict somehow. Okay, and you can exploit that conflict directly with an RPO or just with simple picking the right play for the right defense. And it all starts with the simple run game. Inside zone, there's nothing really complicated here, but everything around that kind of breaks down once the opponent has to stop that. So let's start, this exercise of going through how to attack all of these different defenses. And this will kind of give you an idea of whatever offense you're running. Trips tight end, bunch tight end, double, spread, whatever that is. These same principles carry weight, and they're going to carry weight next year and the year after that and the year after that. And you on the defensive side of the ball need to understand it as well, right? You have to understand what your opponent is actually doing to you, where you're weak, and where you're strong, and to align that to, again, what your opponent is doing to you. Let's start on the defensive side with Tampa 2 here. Nice coverage in terms of the passing game, but we know it is difficult to defend the run with it because you have these two deep half safeties. They don't get involved in the run whatsoever, so it makes it really difficult for your underneath guys to defend the run. Not saying you can't defend the run with cover 2, but it makes it generally harder. You have to give up something somewhere, or you have to have some skill advantage in terms of your personnel, which isn't always the case. So the big conflict right here is that you have this middle linebacker who not only is initially lined outside of the box, he needs to cover deep middle of the field and plug this B gap right here. And so that's a pretty big conflict. And what you'll see when we snap the ball is that he kind of backpedals. And it allows you to, okay, he actually ended up defending it pretty well. But you get into these situations where you can very easily run it through the middle of the field. Okay, and again, I was actually a little bit surprised by how well he did right there. I think the targeting is a little bit weird with the receiver, but nevertheless, cover 2, because you don't have those safeties in helping in the run game, it's very, very easy for you to just simply run inside zone. Okay, so that's one thing. So if your opponent or if you are running inside zone and being effective, what is the next natural course of action? You're going to go to cover 3. We know cover 3 is a good run defense, right? You know, things look very, very similar right here in terms of the defensive front. But now this guy that is filling this B gap where inside zone wants to hit, he is not in as big of a conflict because there's a deep middle safety right here that's basically covering him, right? So he can be aggressive to fit the run. And let me just do that by the user. Okay, he can be aggressive to fit the run, knowing that he has help over the top. Now, this will give you a little bit of indication that this, just because you have an extra player in the box, i.e. this safety right here, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're even good against the run. So right here, I was able to aggressively fit this frontside B gap, but the opponent, the running back, was able to bounce it outside, and the edge defender here didn't do a great job of setting the edge, and even though you're nicely fit inside the box, you're able to kind of run around that. But that's not always going to be the case. In some cases, this guy will set a good hard edge, but obviously, coming up against an all-pro left tackle right there, that's a difficult task for him. But the bigger problem, okay, so that's one thing, right? This guy can hard fit this B gap knowing that he's protected vertically, but he's not protected horizontally. Okay, so even bigger problem is if he fits that hard, you can, and forgive me as I have 2 hands for 4 sticks right here, but he fits that B gap hard, and you throw that bubble, and you have numbers on the outside, right? So let's go ahead and check out the instant replay right here. Right now, he fits the box. Our safety is drifting into the middle of the field, and so now we have 3-on-2. Luckily for the defense, you have Flowers. I'm pretty sure he's not a good run blocker, and then you have a pretty intense safety, and I believe that's Chin. That can just shed that easily, but obviously if you have the good ratings, that's a block, a safety in the middle of the field, and now you have the ball and you're running for a score. And the reason when you look at that is, this guy's in actually a conflict, right? Because, you have the C-gap defender in the defensive end right here. You would say that this guy's the B-gap defender. This guy's fitting outside of number 1 receiver. This guy's fitting outside of number 2 receiver. But then you have nobody outside of the number 3 receiver. So this is just a classic RPO conflict right here, where this guy has to fill the B gap and he has to cover horizontally. And so he just can't be in 2 places at once, right? So you can just simply call an RPO like this, and we know how effective that this has been, not just this year, but years before. So then the next logical thing you do, you say, okay, let's go cover 1. Cover 1 is kind of similar idea here, where we have that deep middle safety, but then we're gapped out everywhere else, right? We have C gap, B gap, A gap, A gap, dedicated B gap defender, dedicated edge defender right here, and then you have 3-on-3 on the outside right here, right? So if you go and you try to throw that RPO, the guy's there to make that tackle, okay? If you don't throw that RPO, then you're kind of running it into this gapped out box and you have nowhere to go. Okay? And so you've successfully defended this RPO. However, what you're starting to see, particularly this year, is the quarterback run game. So now once you involve the quarterback, the numbers change. Okay, so let's go over it again. I went over it, kind of going from weak to strong. Let's go over it strong to weak. Ignoring the quarterback for now. The box is completely gapped out. You have C gap, B gap, A gap, A gap, B gap, C gap, and then you have the D gap right here. This corner is actually setting the edge right here. He's playing outside leverage in coverage on the tight end, and he's naturally aligned to defend that edge in terms of defending the run. But now what happens if that running back turns into a lead blocker? Well, now the offense is getting a +1 in the run game. So this guy is fitting the so-called D gap outside of the tight end, but then you get the running back blocking this corner, and then who's got the gap outside of that? Nobody. Okay, so let's take a look at what this can look like right here. Obviously, that's not always going to happen, but even before that juke, we're 10 to 20 yards down the field. Again, so who is going to fit this gap right here between the sideline and my running back? Who has the quarterback responsibility, basically? That's this guy in the middle of the field. At the snap of the ball, kind of, either flat-footed or drifting off into the middle third. There's nobody here to defend that. So although in one aspect we're perfectly good in terms of the conventional run game and the pass off of that, what happens with these single high defenses is that they are not prepared to defend the quarterback run game because, again, you have one guy that's just dedicated in the deep middle of the field and can't be that +1 to defend the quarterback. Now, is that always going to be the case? Not necessarily, right? There's sometimes, if you are, particularly good with the user and you're over here, you could kind of cheat over and steal a gap, right? If you see this, there's certain gaps you don't really need to fill. Okay, but, generally speaking, this guy's a little bit out of the position. Same with over here. If you're using this guy, you can be more aggressive, but you're still generally a little bit out of position at the snap of the ball. But anyway, we know this has been a really effective run game, and it's really, really difficult to defend this with single high coverage, cover 3, cover 1. So then what do? Well, we know that cover 4 type of coverages have that extra guy in the fit. So we go to cover 4 palms. So now we don't have basically a wasted defender in the middle of the field. We have both safeties involved in the run game. So let's take a look at the numbers. Okay, we have edge defender over here, the C gap. We have the B gap. We have the Mike linebacker folding in from outside to inside. A gap, B gap, C gap. And now we have what would look like normally 2 guys for the D gap outside of the tight end. But in this case, again, the running back is our extra blocker. So he can take one of these guys, but he can't take both of them. Let me just reset, get these guys back to position. He could take one guy, but not both of them. In this case, actually, he didn't take any of them. They both made the tackle. So if you want to defend the quarterback run game, you have to make sure that you have the appropriate numbers for it. So generally speaking, I think cover 4 is always going to be solid against the run. For a conventional run game where it's just the running back, you don't necessarily need both of those guys in the fit. So you can get away with cover 3s, you can get away with cover 6s, cover 9s. But as soon as you have the quarterback in the run game, that changes the numbers and it requires you to either play these quarters, palms coverages, or something like cover 0, right? Where you have 6 guys blitzing and the safeties can fit as well. So you need that kind of, they call it like 9-man spacing, where you have the corners, you kind of ignore those guys, and you have all of the interior guys helping otherwise. You can get away with cover 3 in some cases. Again, if you have just superiority or you're moving gaps around and things like that, it's just don't even think about that. Just think about it. If you have a quarterback run game, you got to get both those safeties in the fit. Now, let's go back on the other side of things. What about on the, let's revisit the left side. So let's go back to the RPO alert bubble. So in this case, you have the numbers, right? So this guy is basically folding in to the B gap, but you still have 3-on-3 over here. You still have 3-on-3, unlike cover 3 where I threw that bubble and you had 3-on-2. So what'll happen in the run game is that he folds inside and he'll stuff the run. But when you get the bubble, you have 3-on-3 again. Now, the reality of the situation is that this guy doesn't play anything to the flat. So what'll happen is that you'll throw it out there, and he's just going to have to rally and get that tackle, okay? And, this is big nickel over G, so this guy is usually aligned over number 3. Pretty much every other set in this game, he's aligned more over number 2, and that'll put him in a bit better of a position to come down and make that tackle. Now, in some cases, 4 or 5 yards isn't good enough, and you can't allow that at all. And there's certain things you can do. There's certain things like, I think it was like, if you back off, I don't know why it's not letting me, but if you back this guy off, you can kind of mess with the targeting. I wasn't able to pull it off here, but there's ways that you can kind of mess with the targeting, or what you can do is you can do like stunts, like you can do a left tex, and what that'll allow you to do is like this guy will rip inside, basically defending the B gap so that this guy can stay and defend the bubble. But again, yeah, big nickel over G seems to be a little bit weird with this stuff. This is usually like my go-to when I'm in like 2-4 or regular nickel, but in any case, you have numbers over here to defend the bubble and numbers over here to defend the quarterback run game. But, and here's the kicker. Let's go back to the pass. Let's go 4 verticals right here. And let's go back to palms. Let's get off this guy, and let's see what happens here. Now this is where I go back to the original statement of this video. Every play is an RPO. So this is a passing play. Okay, not a run play, not an RPO, not play action, just a straight up passing play. And we ran the ball. And for quite a lot of yards. Okay. Now, again, just because you have the numbers in theory, right? We have 9-man spacing, we have quarters run game, safeties are in the fit, but we can manipulate the situation such that those gaps, those lanes in terms of the run game can still be exploited. Okay, and so there's different ways of doing that. It's either at the very start of this video where the gaps were clearly open, right? It was cover 2, and we just said, let's not make this complicated. Let's just hand the ball off inside zone right into that open B gap, and let's get our yards. Once you spin down into cover 3, okay, then, it looks like the box is heavy. We don't really know what the strong side linebacker is doing. So let's do a quick RPO. So we can do a quick read right after the snap of the ball. He's in conflict. If he expands with the bubble, we hand it off for a good chunk of yards, probably even better than we were with cover 2. If he fits the run, we throw the bubble out there and we're good to go. Then you have something like this where it's more or less the same thing. It's, are my passing options open? No. So quarters and palms, they do a great job at 4 verticals, all those different combinations of 4 verticals. Everybody's covered, but they're covering that while leaving their run lanes. And so you have somebody like Lamar Jackson. If you're playing Ultimate Team, basically every quarterback is Lamar Jackson, with just different names. You're able to run that through there. So now this is where I end the video with a bit of a disappointment, where I don't have an answer for this yet. And I don't think anybody does. I think we play around with contains and stunts and spies and blitzes and things like that. But the quarterback scramble is, like, to me, the most difficult RPO to defend. And I do have some ideas on that in terms of a defensive system that defends the pass while maintaining gap integrity for anything, whether that's simple inside zone, whether it's a bubble RPO, whether it's a deeper read RPO, or if it's a quarterback scramble at the end of the play. The idea is that you are maintaining gap responsibility throughout the entire lifetime of the play. pre-snap, post-snap, and after the reads. Still kind of working on a few things with it, but expect a video sometime soon. So if you're new, definitely subscribe. There's going to be more interesting videos on the defensive side of the ball. There's also the membership, which has some more interesting content along these lines if you're interested. But definitely stay tuned, because we're going to be tackling this idea of defense in Madden, which is proven to be really, really difficult, but also, to be honest, a really fun challenge. Anyway, we'll see you guys in the next one.